Oh, hey guys, Justice Curry with you. I want to talk about ride-alongs. What is a ride-along? Yeah, I already know what a ride-along is. It's where you, as a citizen, would go on a ride-along with a law enforcement officer and kind of see what they see. Um, that was one of my first brushes with the law. Yeah, technically. When I was in high school, I did a ride along with the local PD in Marysville, Michigan, just a Mayberry nothing place. Hardly anything happens there. But my eyes were like this, being a 17-year-old kid, and neighbors arguing, your grass clippings got on my lawn, and when you were mowing the lawn, and people arguing, he's just like, all right. Or we went up to serve a subpoena, court summons, and went to a bad area of another neighboring town, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never been like this, seen this. And for some reason, I was hooked. I wanted more of it. And my dad was a firefighter, and that's initially what I thought I wanted to do. But I ended up getting in trouble and arrested when I was 17. I'll save that for another story. I've never told anybody about this. And that's when it really clicked inside me. I went, I want to do this. This is a frigging amazing. And I kind of set my goals and sights on becoming a police officer myself. Well, I did another one when I became a police cadet for Port Huron while going through college. And what is a police cadet? We'll do another video on police cadets. I got a million video ideas. Well, I did one after my shift one time and went out and we just did a traffic stop. And I remember the suspect vehicle kind of whipping around and didn't want to stop right away. And he threw a giant bag of weed out the window. And, the officer ran up after the car pulled over, put the guy in handcuffs and got back up. And they put the other two knuckleheads in handcuffs. Walked back a block and found this big old bag and took one of them to jail. And I remember, very embarrassing, by the way, because I didn't tell my mother that I was going to be held over. And this is before cell phone. I had no cell phone. So I got out of work at, I don't remember what it was, 10 p.m. And now she's expecting me to come home, and I didn't. And it's like 1 a.m. now because we were at the police, at the jail, taking one of the guys in. And over the radio, the dispatcher calls my call sign. I'm like, what? Why are they calling? I think it was like, I can't remember what it was. And I answered, and I said, yeah, go ahead. And it said, your mother is checking on your status. Can you please give her a call? And you could tell the dispatcher was like containing laughter. And in that police department, Port Huron, they would scratch the radio, meaning other officers would hold the mic down so it was open air, and then they would rub it, and that's to indicate they were laughing or that was hilarious. And all of a sudden, everyone's scratching it, and I felt this small. Oh my gosh, you talk about your gut falling down to your stomach, and you're going, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like, Mom, you embarrassed me. Anyway, that was my second ride along. And I never did any. It's one thing I should have done more, was more ride alongs. And I most of you guys watching this are probably not cops, and a few of you are. But if you have a chance, go to your local PD, email, go down there, call, ask to speak to a supervisor, and say you're interested. Because most departments, even though they don't advertise it, will allow people within their community to do ride-alongs. Just because. You don't need a reason. And they'll schedule that with you, barring maybe you don't have a felony. Our department had a policy, if you had a misdemeanor, you would have to get approval from the chief. Because I had family members that might have got an MIP, minor in possession ticket, when they were younger and they wanted to do a ride along, but they had a misdemeanor on their record, so I had to get special permission. So when I became a cop myself, we had interns do ride alongs. We could have family members, friends do ride alongs, and those are really, really special times, especially when I was a school resource officer at a local high school. There's a security guard in particular, Chris was his name, and he was real curious about becoming a cop. So we had hours and hours of conversations about it. He was real good with the kids. You know, he's strong. He would help me wrestle with them constantly when people were out of control fighting. And he did 2 ride-alongs with me. And we had a blast. I remember one of the first ones we did was pulled over a car, and we're walking up to the car, and the guy takes off. And we run back in the car. I go, I'm in pursuit, and we're lights inside. And all of a sudden, you know, a mile down the road, it dawns on me, oh my gosh, in the policy for ride-alongs, you can't do pursuits. You have to kick out your rider because of liability, because those are super dangerous. You get into an accident, the rider dies, even though they sign a waiver saying they can't sue the police department. Luckily, one of the supervisors canceled he called off the chase and said, don't pursue, you know, what was the reason for the stop, etc. Do you know why the guy fled? No. And we stopped it. Unfortunately, side note, that bad guy got away. He got into another pursuit a day later and ended up striking a motorcycle and turning the guy into a vegetable. And they caught him, and I had to go interview him at the jail, and it was just a horrible situation. Anyway, Chris did another ride along with me in the wintertime, I remember, and a car was fleeing from a neighboring jurisdiction. It's going down these side streets, and it's all icy out. Van crashes, and 2 dudes take off running. Well, Chris, my ride-along guy, happens to be African American, and so are the guys taking off running from this van. So Chris and I get out, and we're chasing after these people, and I fall and just fell so hard. I end up jacking up my knee. I'm like limping, but Chris keeps running. And all these other officers are converging on the scene, and they just have a description, you know, black male fleeing in this direction, and they see Chris running, and they're pulling out tasers. Get on the ground, get on the ground. And I'm seeing this like a block away going, oh my God, my rider's going to get tasered. And I'm screaming, he's with me. I'm limping. Oh my God, I'm so much pain. He's with me. Stop. And he's like, oh, I didn't do nothing. The guy ran this way. And once I came, I'm like, he's with me. He's with me. The dude went that way over the fence. And, you know, they gave chase over the fence, got the canine, ended up catching the dudes and whatnot. But Chris ended up becoming a police officer himself in a neighboring county. I feel bad I haven't done a ride-along with him. I really, especially now, I don't have an excuse not to, because before I was just juggling too many things. I still am super busy, but I want to see how he's doing, and it's been a few years. So this is reminding me to touch base with Chris, because he's an awesome dude, and I want to see how he's doing at this other police department. Well, I had other people do ride-alongs. My father-in-law loved to do them. I would call him the Death Rider, because every time he did it, it was like he was a magnet for death. The craziest, grossest, diabolical dead body scenes that I've ever been on in my career, he's doing the right. He was a jinx to me. And I'll talk about some of these stories later. Just remind me in the comments later, weeks later, whatever, say, talk about the poop room. I want to talk about the poop room and blow your ever-loving mind. And my father-in-law, he would do them. We had in our policy, you could only do it every 6 months. So he had it like on his calendar, like did them consistently every 6 months for many years. So, and I was lucky enough to have my wife do one before kids. Then we went, it's pretty dangerous. And both of us being in a car, I don't want both of us getting killed. So we stopped doing them once we had children. Or she did them, but she did them with other police officers. And she was a reserve deputy herself, so she was doing it with the sheriff department. But we had, my dad did them. One of my favorites, though, is my mother-in-law. So she's never going to watch this video, so I don't care. Like, she's a prim and proper lady, like very elegant and kind of just, I'm not going to stick my foot in my mouth. But you get what I'm saying. Awesome human being. Love my mother-in-law, but she's never been to that world, that segment of society. So I remember one of the very first calls we go to, is a guy and a girl arguing. There's kids everywhere, disgusting house, smelly, whatever. And they're arguing. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to figure out, is there probable cause that a crime happened? And, did he hit you? What's going on? No. I'm like, what did the argument happen over? So I can put a Band-Aid over this cancer relationship. And that's an analogy I constantly would use. And it turned out it was because she cheated on him recently, and the guy that she cheated on had a bigger member. So now they were reconciling their relationship, but she wanted to poke his button and start teasing him and saying he had a small you-know-what, which freaking made him pissed off because he's drunk. And, so literally the argument was blowing out of control because she's saying, I've been with more of a man than you. It was crazy. But there's a million of those types of situations. The best part of that is I'm looking over at my mother-in-law, and she's by the door, and her eyes are like dinner plates, just wide open, like, oh my, there are people like this. And I just remember I'm talking to these people, I'm looking at her, and I just get this smile on my face, like, you get to see a glimpse into what I see every single day, certain segments of society. Like, I was never bored. You become a cop, your life is going to be adventurous because there's constant things. And in the beginning, it's fun, it's new, you can't stop talking about it. But after a while, the insanity becomes normal. And I wouldn't have adrenaline dumps anymore because it was just like, okay, another fight I'm in, another this, another that, whatever. Because you just build up a tolerance, stress inoculation. You do it enough times. But it was fun seeing someone that never been in that situation. Side note, I'm listening. I had an earpiece because my police radio, I had it tied in so I could hear what was going on, and people around me couldn't hear it because, what if the guy had a warrant, or you're sneaking up to a house on an alarm? You don't want your radio squawking. And the first half of my career, there was no such thing as earpieces, so you'd have to walk with your hand over the mic to muffle it when you wanted to be stealthy. But later, earpieces were invented, and it was awesome. Well, I hear in my ear that there's an officer in pursuit, and he's real close by. So I was just like, you guys, you got everything handled here? All right. We got to go. We got an emergency. And I'm like, go. So I'm running out to my car. My mother-in-law's running out to my car. We get in. I'm like, woo! And I'm just not thinking that she has no idea what's going on because I'm not verbalizing any of this to her. So she's just, she's like, what are we doing? Where are we going? Who's dying? Like, wah! She's freaking out. Needless to say, that was the last ride along she ever did with me. And I did one with my wife's grandpa, who's still alive in his 90s, and that was real fun too because I got to make a few arrests, and he's watching this like, oh my gosh, because it kind of, if you're middle class, upper middle class, yeah, you're gonna see Jerry Springer type things on the television, and no one's normal. I'm not judging any of that because everyone's messed up. I've been in many social circles. I'm kind of like a chameleon. And no one's perfect. Everyone's got their freaking issues. But, poor, lower income people maybe with some mental substance abuse problems, they live a different life that you may just, and some of you might be watching this. No judgment. I'm not perfect either. But to actually go into, if you're not from that life and you walk into that life and you see it and you go, oh, it's culture shock. It's culture shock. That's a good example of what it is. So ride-alongs. If you have an opportunity, please do one. They are one of the funnest things that you can possibly do. I look forward to doing some with a lot of my old co-workers out there. I learned a lot of times from trial and error on what not to do. Like, we had interns, young guys, girls wanting to become cops themselves, and they had to do so many hours of ride-alongs per their accreditation. And I remember one guy we get into another, there's always foot chases, it seemed like. We get into a foot chase. We're chasing this guy through backyards. I'm running. This guy's kind of far. I can't see him anymore, the suspect. And I had the intern was with me. And next thing I know, I'm like, where is my intern? Like, what the frick? Where did they go? And now I just have to stop. And I'm like yelling her name, where are you? And I finally find him. And he's like, oh, I tried to cut him off by going around this side of the house. And I go, dude, no. You need to be attached at my hip. Because what if you went to that side of the house and so did bad guy and now you're fighting there? I keep running a different direction because I don't know where he's at. And you have no radio, you have no gun, you have no... big no-no. So I had to learn that was a big thing for people to not to do. Other parts of the policy was professionally dressed. Like I had some of my old buddies from high school and college coming to town. They're like, oh, I'm going to do right along with you. I'm like, do you own a collared shirt? First of all, you have to wear that. You can't wear jeans. Like you have to look semi-professional when you're doing it. And it's just part of the policy. What other fun? Oh, another intern that we had. I remember I'd probably do a little more traffic stops, be a little more proactive if the call volume was down. And I remember having this one young lady doing a ride along with me, and a car pulls out of Big Bend parking. It's a local apartment complex that we had a lot of problems with. And the guy didn't use his turn signal or rolled. I don't even remember what the original thing was, but it was just a minor infraction. And I light him up, and now he's not pulling over. Again, I shouldn't have followed him, but he wasn't exceeding the speed limit. It wasn't a pursuit because he was obeying the traffic laws. Now the guy is going a couple blocks down, pulls into a separate apartment complex that's not in my jurisdiction. And we're going through that. I'm calling out, I got failed to stop. This is the license plate, this is the vehicle description, blah, 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 blah. We're blowing in the back of the apartment complex. And I'm getting a little amped up, and I can see my rider. She's just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So the car finally pulls into a parking space, of all things. And you would expect, 9 times out of 10, they jump out like a rabbit and start running away. That didn't happen this time. The dude stays in the car, and I run up to the car. I'm trying to open the door. I'm yelling at him, get out of the car, get out of the car. This is before tasers. And he's just like high as all get out. You know, what do you pull me over for? Give me the runaround. And I'm like pulling him out. Get your hands behind your back. And trying to get his hands interlocked so I can put handcuffs on him. And he's giving me oh, you're pulling me over because I'm black thing. And just trying to throw me off. And you're not searching. He's going, you're not searching my car. And I'm going, what? Hold on. Let's go one thing at a time. Whose car is my baby mama's my baby mama's mom's car. So I ended up, who's your baby mama? Oh, it's Shanice Anderson. Okay, look up Shanice. Oh, here's Shanice's mom. Here's the registered owner of the car. Hey, ma'am, I'm out with your car right now. You don't mind? He just fled from me, blah, blah, blah. You don't mind if I search it real quick? Just to kind of double down. I could anyway. I'm going to impound it. But that could be a law class later on. You want to have multiple reasons or exceptions to the search warrant rule, and vehicles, I would be good, but I don't want defense attorneys poking holes and kind of making one of the exceptions go away. I went straight to the source, talked to the registered owner. They said, yes, search my car. Go ahead. Pop the trunk, 7 pounds of weed. And this is Michigan I live in. Weed was illegal for the majority of my career until the last couple years when it became legal. But 7 pounds of weed was my biggest bust that I ever got on just a random traffic stop. And I remember bringing him in. He was drunk. He was high. Middle of the day. Just got done, he told me, after an hour of interrogation. He didn't want to give it up too easy. But talking to him, and finally broke down that he was in that apartment complex. He just purchased the weed for several $1,000s, was leaving when I pulled him over. And so he thought it was a big setup. And I'm like, dude, it's just a total random thing. But that intern ended up becoming a police officer north of here in Holland. Another side weird thing. So when when she was going through the background investigation. I go off on tangents all the time, don't mind me. She's going through the background police for the Holland Police Department near Grand Rapids in Michigan. And through any background, if you ever had law enforcement contact, negative, that you were disclosing that. And she probably did in the interview. Well, it turned out that I wrote her a minor in possession ticket when she was underage and drunk at a apartment party. Wrote her a ticket. Then all these years later, she becomes an intern. I didn't remember. I wrote thousands of those freaking tickets. And she knew. She knew it was me that wrote her the ticket, and she didn't bring it up. Then became a police officer. Then had to disclose it. So the background investigator was calling saying, hey, you remember, was she respectful with you? Can you give me any more details about this situation other than what he was looking on the ticket? I went, she's the girl that was with me with the huge bust and the weed and all that crazy stuff. So I don't know why I'm telling you that. Adds nothing to the story. But it's unique. It's a small world. You know how things flow around. I'm sure I'm going to push the end button. This happens to me almost every video I do because I don't take notes. I don't edit these things. It's just trail of consciousness. I always forget something. Like I'm going to go, gosh dang it. Why didn't I tell him that story? But that's okay. I got all the time in the world. So please hit that follow. Share this. Will you do me a favor? Share it on your personal page. I want to have some fun with this channel. Talk about these situations. And please do a ride along yourself. You will not regret it. It's crazy eye-opening. You're going to love it. Yes, it's a little scary. One of my best friends never did a ride along with me, even though I pressured him constantly. And he did. I'm not going to throw him under the bus and say who he is. But he would go, I'm too scared. Like, I'm a, you know what, I don't want to die. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to die. Well, you might die. But it's fine. Come live a little. But everyone has their own comfort level. And that's A-okay. So please share it. Follow it. If this is on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. I love y'all. Be kind to one another.